First story. My entitled stepson got a mediocre job and thinks he is above me. Now he refused to share his candy with my daughter, so I grounded my ungrateful stepson and gave his candy to my daughter. He sulked, so I took away everything he owned. Now I'm regretting it. I, F32, have been married to my husband M40 for about 6 years now. He has a 17-year-old son Jake from a previous relationship who lives with us full-time. We also have 2 children together, our daughter Emily, 8, and a baby boy 7 months. My husband and I both work full-time, and while things are usually stable, lately our house has been feeling like a pressure cooker. To be completely honest, my relationship with Jake has always been civil, but never really close. He's polite, mostly keeps to himself, and helps out around the house when asked, but there's always this subtle wall between us. I get that I'm not his mom, and I've never tried to replace her, but it does feel like he doesn't fully respect me as a parental figure either. It's a weird dynamic that's just gotten trickier as he's gotten older. Jake started working a part-time job at Starbucks last December. He was excited, it was his first job, and he took a lot of pride in being able to buy his own things. He mostly spends the money on games, tech stuff, clothes, and snacks. He's not reckless with money, and I'll give him credit, he's more responsible than most 17-year-olds I know. Still, I've noticed a pattern. Ever since he started making his own money, he's gotten more independent, but also more territorial. Like everything that's his suddenly has to be off limits. I get that he's asserting boundaries, but sometimes it feels excessive in a house where we all share and pitch in. There have been a few moments in the past couple of months that rubbed me the wrong way. One time, Emily was watching him play on his new gaming chair and asked if she could sit in it when he was done. He snapped at her and told her to leave it alone. It's not a toy. She cried. I told him he could have been gentler, and he rolled his eyes and walked away. Another time, I caught him eating takeout in his room, something we've asked him not to do, and when I knocked to remind him, he said, "I paid for this with my money," and shut the door in my face. My husband usually sides with Jake in these moments. His reasoning is that Jake's almost an adult. He's earning his own money, and we should be giving him space. I get that to an extent, but I also feel like he's still a part of this family and should be expected to act like it, meaning sometimes you share, sometimes you compromise. The tipping point was a few nights ago. Jake came home from a late shift with a Target bag full of snacks, Doritos, Skittles, chocolate bars, soda, the usual teen junk. Emily saw him walk in with the bag and, like any 8-year-old, got curious and asked what he bought. He told her it was just some snacks, and she immediately asked if she could have some. Now here's where things spiraled faster than I expected. Jake said no, which, okay, fine, but he said it in this really sharp tone. "No, Emily. These are mine. Don't touch it." Emily asked again, not whining, just asking, and he cut her off with a louder, "I said no." She looked shocked and started tearing up. Then she went to his bag, probably out of impulse, and peeked in to see what kind of candy he had. He yanked the bag back and told her to keep her hands off, and she started crying full on. She came running into the living room, where I was holding the baby who had just fallen asleep after an hour of screaming because he's teething, sobbing that Jake wouldn't let her have any candy. The crying immediately woke up the baby, who started fussing again. I was already at the edge of my nerves. The baby was overtired and cranky. I hadn't even sat down to eat yet. And now I had Emily crying about Jake being mean over candy. I called Jake into the room and asked what happened. He told me she kept asking for candy. He said no, and she tried to grab it anyway. He said he told her multiple times to leave it alone. I said, "Look, she's your little sister. Could you just give her a piece of candy to calm her down? You don't have to give her everything." He flat out refused. "I bought this. It's mine. She doesn't get to demand stuff from me." I told him that wasn't the point and reminded him that all the food he eats outside of his snacks, breakfast, lunch, and dinner is paid for by me and his dad. Using his logic, I could say he doesn't get to have anything in the fridge since he didn't pay for it. He said that wasn't fair, that food for the house is different from personal stuff, and this was something he bought specifically for himself. I said, "And you live in our house, so maybe you should learn to share a little instead of acting like you're above everyone else just because you have a job." He got quiet for a second and then mumbled, "This is so stupid," under his breath. That was the last straw for me. I told him that if he didn't hand over some of the candy, I'd ground him for the weekend for being disrespectful. He doubled down and said he wasn't being disrespectful, just setting a boundary. I said refusing to share is one thing, but arguing with me and making Emily cry over candy was unacceptable. He kept pushing back until I finally told him he had one last chance. He sighed, got up, grabbed the bag, and tossed it on the kitchen table. I took out half the candy, gave a few pieces to Emily right away, and set the rest aside. Then I told Jake he was grounded for the weekend, no Xbox, no going out, and no phone after 9 p.m. He didn't say anything. Just picked up what was left of his candy, went to his room, and shut the door quietly. I could tell he was pissed, but at that point I didn't care. I was exhausted, dealing with 2 cranky kids, and tired of him thinking he was above sharing. Later that night, when my husband came home and I told him what happened, he just stared at me for a few seconds like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He asked, "You grounded him? Over candy?" I said it wasn't just the candy, it was the attitude, the way he talked back, and how he made Emily cry. He said I completely overreacted. That Jake had every right to keep what he bought with his money. That I didn't even give him a chance to cool off or walk away before escalating it into a punishment. I pushed back and said I'm not going to let a teenager act like a king in this house just because he gets a paycheck now. He raised his voice then and told me I was being petty and controlling, and that I made a huge mistake by treating Jake like a toddler who needs to be taught a lesson for having boundaries. He wasn't done. He said this wasn't the first time I let Emily's emotions dictate discipline. He brought up how I always expect Jake to be the bigger person because he's older, even when Emily is the one crossing lines. He reminded me of the time she broke one of his gaming controllers accidentally, but still, and I brushed it off as she didn't know better, and then told him to just let it go because she cried. According to him, I never actually address Emily's behavior. I just manage her emotions by making Jake bend. He said Jake's almost 18, and if I keep treating him like a second-class sibling who gets punished for saying no, I shouldn't be surprised if he starts shutting everyone out. I didn't have much to say to that. He wasn't wrong about the controller incident. I did kind of gloss over it at the time. And yes, Emily cries when she gets told no, but she's not malicious. She's 8. She doesn't understand social cues perfectly yet. Isn't it normal to expect the older sibling to model better behavior? Apparently not when it crosses the line into forcing someone to hand over things they bought themselves. Jake barely said 2 words to me the next morning. He left early for school. At dinner, he sat at the far end of the table and answered only when spoken to. My husband's still short with me, only talking about baby stuff or bills. Even Emily noticed the shift. She asked why Jake was mad and said she didn't mean to get him in trouble. She liked the candy, but she said, I could have waited until tomorrow if he didn't want to give me any. That stung. I started rethinking everything. Was I just reacting to stress? The baby's been miserable all week from teething. I'm exhausted. Emily's been clingy and emotionally all over the place. Maybe I snapped and used Jake as a scapegoat because he stood his ground at a bad time. But then part of me still thinks we're a family. We share. We consider each other. Jake knows how to be kind. He just doesn't like being told to do it. And that attitude's only been getting worse since he started working. I don't think I'm asking for too much. Just basic decency between siblings. I didn't say, give her the whole bag. I said, a piece. Was grounding too far? Maybe. Was taking half the candy too much? Probably. But I still don't like the idea of a kid in my house, acting like everyone's beneath him, just because he clocked some hours at Starbucks and can buy Skittles. But now I'm second-guessing myself because Jake hasn't even asked to get ungrounded. He's just checked out, like he's given up trying to be part of this house. And my husband looks at me differently now, like I crossed a line. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet. Ada. Comments. Comment 1. YTA. Girl. You're power tripping. That kid didn't scream, didn't swear, and didn't insult anyone. He said no calmly at first, and you bulldozed him into submission because your 8-year-old cried. You used the fact that you pay the bills as leverage to take candy from your stepson. Your husband is right. This isn't about candy. It's about you trying to remind Jake that he's not on equal footing in your household. He sets one basic boundary. This is mine, please don't touch. And you punish him for it. That's a hell of a message to send. Your stuff doesn't matter, and your no doesn't count. Also, stop blaming Emily's age for everything. She's old enough to understand when someone says no. You've created a situation where she cries and things happen in her favor. That's not a developmental thing anymore. It's a learned pattern. You owe Jake a real apology. And maybe let the kid enjoy his damn Skittles in peace. Comment 2. YTA. And I'm going to be blunt. You don't like Jake. That's what this boils down to. Your whole post reads like someone keeping receipts on a kid they barely tolerate. The gaming chair, the food in the room, the controller incident, all brought up like you're building a case against him. You don't see Jake as your own. You see him as a guest who needs to fall in line. And maybe you haven't said that out loud, but trust me, he knows. Teenagers aren't stupid. He can feel it. What's messed up is that he was doing everything right, working, buying his own stuff, not asking anyone for handouts, and you still found a way to punish him for not sharing what he bought. That's not about teaching generosity. That's about reminding him who holds the power in that house. And Emily. You're setting her up to become one of those girls who cries her way out of accountability and then wonders why no one respects her at 16. You better unlearn that real quick. You owe Jake more than an apology. You owe him the space to feel safe in his own home. Comment 3. I'm going with YTA, but I want to zoom out a bit. You're not just undermining Jake, you're undermining your own authority in the long run. You think you're keeping the peace by making the older kid yield to the younger one. But all you're doing is teaching both of them that fairness is optional if someone cries loud enough. And here's the kicker. You just torched your credibility with Jake. You punished him for asserting a completely normal, reasonable boundary. Next time you actually need his cooperation, he's going to assume it's a trap. And your husband? He clearly doesn't trust your judgment right now, which means you're going to start losing parental ground in this household. You need to course correct hard. Not just with Jake, with how you handle conflict between your kids. Because one day soon, Emily's not going to be 8 anymore. And she's going to learn that manipulation works until it doesn't. Update. Thanks to everyone who commented on the original post, even the harsh ones. I wasn't expecting this much attention, and I'll be honest, I didn't agree with most of the replies. A lot of people called me controlling, manipulative, even abusive, which I think is completely overblown. But I did take one thing away. Jake clearly wants independence. He made that very clear with the candy, with how he talks lately, and with how he's been acting like he doesn't owe this family anything now that he has a job. So I decided to give him what he wanted. Last week, I stopped buying any extra snacks. At all. No more chips, candy, or soda in the grocery run. Emily asked why there were no fruit snacks in the pantry anymore, and I said, Jake buys his own stuff now. Isn't that cool? When you're older, you can do that too. Jake noticed immediately. He asked one night if there was anything to snack on, and I said, You've got your own money now, right? That's your thing. Then I made it official. Any snacks brought into the home must be shared. No exceptions. I made it look cute, bubble letters, markers, little doodles. I even added, sharing is caring, at the bottom. I didn't say it out loud, but Jake knew it was aimed at him. I'll admit, it felt good. Like, he wanted to play this game, so let's play. I made a point not to enforce it on anyone else. If I brought home a treat for Emily, or if my husband picked up dessert, no one else was expected to share it. If Jake said something, I'd say sweetly, Oh, but that's different. This is from family grocery money. Yours is from your job, remember? We just want to support your independence. He started locking his snacks in a box in his room. That's when I escalated. One weekend, he brought home a few candy bars and drinks. He left the bag in the kitchen to grab something from the bathroom. I took it and put the items in a clear bowl labeled Family Treat Bowl in the center of the kitchen island. He came back, looked around, and then saw them in the bowl. He said, Are you serious? And I just smiled and said, This is a family home. We share. That nearly broke him. He clenched his jaw and went to his room without saying anything. But then things hit a new level at a family gathering this weekend. We had some relatives over. One of my nieces, she's 9, asked Jake if she could have some chips he brought. He hesitated and said, I'll get you some later, okay? Before he could walk away, I spoke up loudly in front of everyone. Oh, honey, remember what we talked about? Families share. Why don't you show everyone how generous you are? He looked at me like he couldn't believe I said that in front of everyone. Then he handed over the chips without a word. My sister gave me a strange look. I brushed it off. After everyone left, my husband pulled me aside. He said, You've made your point. This isn't parenting anymore. It's punishment. I told him I was teaching life skills, and that if Jake wanted adult freedom, he needed adult responsibility. He said, No, what you're doing is punishing him for telling you no, and you're making our daughter part of it. That's when I finally snapped. I told him, You always defend him and never me. I'm the one raising the baby, managing the house, and keeping everything together. I just want everyone to feel like a family. Why is that so wrong? I cried. A lot. He walked away. Said we'd talk later. The next day, I overheard Jake telling Emily, "I'm done with this house the second I turn 18. I don't think he knew I was nearby. He wasn't yelling, he said it quietly. Almost like a promise to himself. It hit me harder than I expected. I don't regret standing my ground. He's not a victim. He was rude, dismissive, and condescending about the candy thing. And this is what happens when kids push boundaries. But part of me wonders if I went too far. He doesn't talk to me anymore. Doesn't even respond if I ask a question. Emily still adores him, but now guilt trips him when he won't play. My husband has a cold. Not angry, just distant. It's like I won the fight, but lost the family atmosphere. I don't know if this is fixable. I keep telling myself I'm just doing what any parent would do. But now I feel like the villain in my own house. The air is heavy. Everyone walks on eggshells, even Emily. I thought this would be a teaching moment. Maybe it still can be. But right now, I'm stuck between holding my ground and wondering if this really made anything better. Comments. Comment 1. This is so much worse than your original post. You didn't just double down, you built a effing throne on the hill and dared your stepson to knock you off it. You say you're teaching values, but what you're really teaching is how to mask revenge as moral superiority. Jake said no, that's it. You could have taught your daughter that sometimes people have boundaries. Instead, you created a system of emotional warfare posters on the fridge. Family snack bowls, that's not parenting. That's greater pettiness. And you dragged your 8-year-old into it so you'd have backup. You're not just making Jake feel unwanted, you're weaponizing the idea of family to humiliate him. If I were him, I'd be planning my exit too. You don't get to act like a victim when you've made your home a place where kindness is conditional and manipulative as hell. YTA. Not even a close call. Comment 2. I have to be honest, this was hard to read. Because what you're doing isn't just petty, it's systematic. You built an entire psychological framework around punishing a teenager for doing what you would have done in a heartbeat. Telling someone not to touch his stuff. You made family rules that only apply to him. You narrate everything like you're the noble victim while gaslighting the kid with phrases like, "Why are you so materialistic?" when he reacts to having his SHT stolen. You're doing textbook emotional domination and dressing it up as responsibility training. The part that truly pissed me off was using the niece in front of family to corner him into sharing. Public shaming to enforce private obedience. You want Jake to feel small and worse. You want to look like the saint while doing it. I don't care how well decorated your snack bowl is. You're not a teacher. You're a tyrant with glitter markers. YTA. And you're losing your family one emotional manipulation at a time. Comment 3. You know what this is? Control addiction. You're not reacting to a problem, you're creating it, so you can play moral referee. Jake could have been a model stepson, and you'd still find a way to pull rank. Because the moment he showed a shred of autonomy, you saw it as a challenge to your authority. Jake didn't disobey you. He didn't even disrespect you. He said no. And now you've orchestrated a petty campaign to make him the villain in his own home. I hope your husband sees through this and stands his ground. Because this level of manipulation, especially towards a kid who isn't even yours, is terrifying. YTA. And I hope you wake up before the damage becomes permanent. Update. It's been a couple of weeks since my last post. I thought maybe things would cool off and reset like they usually do. They haven't. Jake is still distant. Not angry, just done. He answers if spoken to and stays polite, but doesn't engage with me or Emily unless he absolutely has to. He's been eating more meals in his room, keeping his stuff locked away, and barely speaks at dinner unless my husband starts the conversation. Even then, it's short. I tried to lift the grounding early, thinking maybe that would open the door. He just said, "I figured it was already over," without looking up from his food. That was it. No relief, no change, just numb. The thing that really got to me happened last weekend. We had some extended family over, my sister, her husband, and their kids. Emily was excited, running around, showing off drawings and toys like she always does. I made a big dinner and tried to put on the everything is normal face. Then my sister's husband walks into the kitchen, holding a paper I'd forgotten was still taped to the fridge. The house snack sharing rules sign. He chuckles and goes, "Wait, is this real?" I just shrugged and said, "It's just a little thing we do to remind the kids about sharing." He looked at me funny and asked, "Why is it written like it's only aimed at Jake?" I said it wasn't, that it was for everyone. But then he pointed out how Emily had just come home from school with a whole pack of Oreos. and no one made her share a single one. That's when my sister stepped in. She said, "You know, I've noticed the way you talk about Jake sometimes. It doesn't sound like you actually like him." I laughed it off, but inside, I felt sick. Because she wasn't wrong. And I think that's the first time someone outside this house has said it out loud. After they left, I took the sign down. Later that night, I finally asked my husband, "Do you think I've been too hard on him?" He said, "I think you've been angry at Jake for not being the kind of stepson you imagine. And now you're punishing him for having boundaries." He didn't say it cruelly, just flat. Like he said it in his head 100 times already. I asked why he never told me sooner. He said, "You wouldn't have listened." I didn't even try to argue. The next day, I took Emily to school, came home, and tried to clean up Jake's snack bowl, the one I had turned into the family sharing bowl. I dumped everything out, washed it, and put it away in the back of the cabinet. It felt pathetic. Like I was deleting evidence I couldn't defend anymore. Later that week, I tried to talk to Jake. I waited until he came home from work, made him tea, and said, "I want to talk, if you're open to it." He said, "I don't really think there's anything to talk about." I pushed. I said I was sorry for the candy thing, the signs, and for making things uncomfortable. I told him I didn't mean to make him feel like his stuff wasn't his. He listened, didn't interrupt, and then just said, "Okay." Not, "I forgive you." Just, "Okay." Then he said, "I'm still moving out as soon as I turn 18. I already talked to my aunt in Portland. She said I can stay with her while I look at colleges." I knew he wasn't happy, but I didn't think he was serious about cutting us off. I genuinely thought it was a phase, just some teen attitude he'd eventually get over. I didn't think he'd actually leave over what I saw as a minor discipline issue. I was angry at first. Angry that he'd planned to leave without even trying to repair things. Angry that he was willing to throw away everything over a few bags of candy and a house rule. And yeah, I said it to him. I told him he was being immature. That he was throwing a tantrum over something that started because his little sister just wanted to share his snacks. That I was tired. The baby was screaming, and I hadn't slept in days when this all started. He didn't even defend himself. He just said, "That's the difference. You had a bad night. I had a bad 3 years." I didn't have anything to say to that. I went to bed early that night and cried. Not because I felt attacked, but because I realized he was right. I've been building tension with him since the day I moved in. I was never openly cruel, but I kept score. Every time he said no, every time he shut a door, every time he reminded me he had a mum who wasn't me, I stored it, and I reacted. And when he finally crossed a line I could justify punishing, I made it count. I don't even know if I want advice anymore. I think I just needed to say it. I don't think Jake will ever forgive me. He'll leave in a few months, and I'll be left with the knowledge that I burned that bridge because I was too tired, too stressed, and too proud to stop. Emily asked me yesterday why Jake doesn't read to her at night anymore. I said he's busy with school and work. She said, "I miss when he liked us." I didn't correct her, because she was right. Comments. Comment 1. You didn't just mess up once, you ran a psychological campaign. And now you're shocked he's packing his bags. You used your power as the parent to twist every minor thing into a moral failing on his part. You wanted obedience masked as respect. You wanted control packaged as lessons. But what you were doing was punishing that boy for having boundaries you couldn't manipulate. Your update is full of regret, but still laced with blame. He's not cutting you off over childish petty things. He's walking away from a hostile environment where the rules always changed to keep him small. He told you straight up this wasn't about candy. It was about years. You just didn't notice because you were too busy proving you were right. Comment 2. You keep painting yourself as overwhelmed and misunderstood. But I noticed you never once said, "I tried to get to know Jake." Not really. Not beyond keeping score. You didn't care who he was, just how often he fell in line. You let your resentment simmer under the surface for years, and it leaked out in 1,000 small decisions: the way you talked to him, the way you weaponized Emily's feelings, and the rules that only applied to him. You turned your home into a loyalty test, and now you're upset that he failed. He's not failing. He's escaping. And you should be damn grateful he didn't explode or turn spiteful. He just quietly decided you weren't worth the effort anymore. That's not immaturity, that's self-preservation. Comment 3. The part that effing broke me was your daughter saying, "I miss when he liked us." That's the cost of all this, not just losing Jake, but teaching your daughter what love looks like when it's conditional and manipulative. You didn't just punish Jake. You taught Emily that affection is a resource to be controlled. That people will stay until they've had enough and then vanish. And later, when she starts pushing friends or partners to just share, because that's what family does, and they walk away, she'll be sitting in the confusion you created. You made your home emotionally unsafe for a kid who never had a choice in living with you. And now you're watching him choose the moment he can. That should have been a wake-up call years ago. You didn't lose a stepson. You pushed him out the effing door. Second story. My brother with no backbone remarried, had a new daughter, and just abandoned all his 3 kids, excluding them from family vacations, and only sending their golden child to private school. Now I plan to take the 3 kids on a trip. Now my brother and Sil demand I take their daughter and started harassing me. So I got their vacation funds coming from their parents cut, forcing Sil to get a job again. So long story short, I 35F live and work abroad, but am from the Midwest. I grew up with my brother Jason 43M and our parents 70s. We were working class, had what we needed, but were not well off by any means. When I was in high school, Jason married Tiffany 40F, who is and was and will always be a mess of a person, a heavy drinker, a partier, and God knows whatever else. But she was hot, and my brother is a dweeb, to put it nicely. They had Jace 19M, Jeff 17M, and Hannah 12F. Their marriage broke down before Hannah was born. They tried working it out, but ultimately got divorced. Jason started dating Jenny 43F, while splitting custody of the kids with Tiffany 50-50. Since Tiff had been a psalm, she received child support and alimony, and my brother worked a lot. I liked Jenny at first. She wasn't a complete smoke show like Tiff, but she was kind, had a good job, and was well educated. I thought, much better match. At first, I know Jenny was upset that the kids didn't immediately love her and call her mum when they were there, and the divorce was hard on them. Got pregnant somewhat fast with Daisy 10F, and they got married. Around this time, the older kids started refusing to go back to Tiff's. She was always drinking and having guys around, so all 3 moved in full-time with Jason and Jenny, and Tiff left town and is no longer in the kids' lives. I tried being understanding. I'm sure having a newborn and then 3 older kids full-time is difficult. But Jenny completely changed. She stopped working but declared she was only a psalm to her kid. Jason was working 70+ hours to make ends meet, and her parents were helping them out. But she controls the finances. This means that the 3 of them, Jason, Jenny, and Daisy, operate as a family unit, going to dinners, events, and even vacations and leaving the older 3 kids at home. I have always thought this was disgusting and voiced my opinion about it. But Jason just said his divorce broke him emotionally, and he will do anything possible to keep Jenny happy so that their marriage works out. Gross, yes. And 10 years ago, to be frank, I was younger, broker, and dumber. So it was kind of more like, yes, my brother effing sucks as a dad, but I live on another continent, and all I can do is be supportive of the kids. I know, not a great attitude in retrospect, and I'm disappointed in myself. I really did my best. When they refused to pay for Jace to learn how to drive, even though Jenny refused to drive the kids anywhere, my mum taught him, and I bought him a used car. We had to shame Jason to put him on his insurance, and he makes Jace pay for it. Same with Jeff, they share the car and use it for their activities, and Hannah's my wife and only child. And we don't want children, has the 3 of them as our sole beneficiaries in our will. Something we did when we found out that Jenny and Jason plan to leave them only the bare minimum amount. Everything goes to Daisy. Also, after we got married 6 years ago, my wife and I decided that we would start taking the older kids on annual trips with us when we went to the US. Nothing fancy, we might be child-free, but we're not billionaires or anything, just well off. But things like a week in Florida, Utah, or California, things like that. They're very outdoorsy kids, so they've had a blast every year. And we plan it when my brother takes Jenny and Daisy on trips, so they don't care. Normally we vacation in the summer, but Jace got an internship this summer, so we decided to move our trip to the fall and are going to Maine leaves. I let Jason know the dates, they're in line with their fall breaks, no worries. And he basically said we need to start including Daisy. Jenny's parents made some bad investments. They're fine but aren't helping them out anymore, and Jenny is looking for a job. But since her parents had always paid for their trips, they can't go on one this year. So, even if all was fair, I wouldn't want to take Daisy on a trip. This is going to shock you with parents like that, and I feel so bad saying this about a child. But Daisy is a huge brat, spoiled, mean, and constantly bragging about the things she gets that her siblings don't. She once told me they weren't her siblings, they were Tiffany's kids. She throws toddler-level tantrums on holidays if she doesn't get as much and more as the other kids, and tells my wife and me we are going to hell at it. I now feel bad for including this. She said it about 5 years ago a few times. And when Jenny was told, it was about the only time I've ever seen her discipline Daisy. I guess she'd heard it from Jenny's aunt. But it was hurtful and hard to forget with everything else. And since Jenny waits on her hand and foot, she's a total slob. I feel bad saying all this. I hope when she grows up, she grows out of it. But there is no way I'd want to take her on a vacation. So I told him I didn't think we'd be able to handle all 4 kids, and we'd just go the 5 of us. He said Jenny could come to help out, absolutely not, or our mom could go love her. But she's getting a freaking hip replacement next month, and does not want to go. Plus the car we'd need for all these people on a road trip would be stupid. We'd probably need 2. And you know what? I don't want to. Anyways, sorry for trauma dumping on you all. This is getting long. I was worried Jason would not let me take the other kids on the trip, but they decided to go the route of shaming us online. Obviously, it's working with their friends and her family, but even my dad told me to stick to my guns. But my wife came to me the other day and basically said, "But are we even better than Jenny if we're favoring some kids over others just because we don't like their mom? Before we were evening things out, but now we're obviously favoring the oldest." She told me to think of the long-term health of my family and our relationships. She said that it's my family, my decision, but wants me to think about it. My gut is saying just take the older 3. But Daisy is only 10. She's not to blame. Would it make me an evil aunt to leave her out? Comments. Comment 1. In the title, it sounds bad, but that child is a nightmare. She hates on the step-siblings, hates on you, brags about her special treatment. It's probably time for her to learn about the consequences of treating others like SHT, NTA. Comment 2. Your family is already broken. Mostly because of your brother's idiotic choices and his wife's selfishness. No, taking only 3 of 4 kids is not great. But you're already up to your neck in horror thanks to other people's actions. Do the older kids plan on keeping dear old dad and the evil stepmother in their lives when they become adults? How much contact would you actually have with bro, his lazy wife, and their spawn if you weren't looking out for the older nibblings? Your parents seem to be siding with you and the older kids as well. What are their thoughts on the situation? You need to start thinking now about what you want for your family and what you're likely to actually have. Start putting your time and focus on that. NTA for choosing the older kids and not the brat. Maybe fight fire with fire and start publicly shaming bro and company for how they've treated his kids over the last 10 years. Or at least threaten to. OP. After Jace left for college, Jason made him give him his house key and told him he needed to stay elsewhere going forward. So over breaks he's been staying with my parents and has very little contact with Jason. Since that's probably what's going to happen to Jeff next year, my wife and I have talked about buying a condo to stay in when we're in town around 2 months out of the year. Since my parents' place is so small, we normally Airbnb it. But that company sucks now lol. And pay Jace/Jeff to house sit. Jace is at college. But Jeff wants to do a trade, so we'll likely stay in town. But I cannot ask an 18-year-old to pay rent. That's crazy. But yes, if Jace is any indication, they won't be too much in contact with Jason when they are adults. Once Hannah isn't living with them, my contact with Jason will be as low as possible, just about our parents. My mum and dad are complicated. Jenny threatens that if they don't give Daisy the best attention, they can't see any of them. I don't know what that means. It's just from this insane text she sent mum. And they do love Daisy, so they put up with them so they can see their grandkids. They have said basically Jason has a bad picker, but is a hard worker. I don't know. Update. Hey guys, I posted about a week ago, and a lot of people asked for updates, but things have gotten yucky. A quick thing. Daisy is not constantly some Veruca Salt-esque monster child. She can be a brat, but she is also funny and caring. She's the only grandchild who has stuck with the church choir that my mum runs, even though I don't think she loves it. Always calls my wife and me on our birthdays. And when their dog was too old to go upstairs, she brought her mattress downstairs and slept next to her every night before she passed away, so she wouldn't be lonely. People aren't cartoon villains, and please stop attacking a 10-year-old. Sorry, I didn't reply to direct messages. I don't feel comfortable doing that. I don't know if that account people were messaging me from was Jenny's, and honestly it wouldn't change anything. I did change some small things for anonymity, and it would be a shame if there were more than one person out there like her. Finally, just a reminder that I live half the world away, a 15-hour minimum plane ride. I can't just pop over, and there are time zone issues. I also do well for myself, but don't have unlimited money. So stop telling me to take Daisy on trial trips and buy a 4-bedroom house for the oldest 3 to live in lol. And keep in mind, I live in remote, mostly rural areas, not bustling metropolises with vibrant expat communities and international schools. It's the nature of my job. I've worked hard for it. And it's not conducive to having kids, young adults living with me. I'm not a messy person, and I don't do social media drama. So I've been ignoring Jenny and Jason's little vague booking campaign. And honestly, I wasn't even going to update until I got some background information. But basically, I got a call from my brother last weekend, and it was Daisy crying and telling me she would be good. And she's sorry for being bad. And she wants to go on the trip. And she promises she'll be quiet and not say anything rude. It was dark. She was saying she was going to find a way to show me and my wife and her parents she was good and not a bad person and everything would be okay. I tried calming her down. I assured her that both her aunts love her very much and don't think she is a bad person at all. My brother took the phone and was just like, "See what you've done," and hung up. I tried calling back. He didn't answer. I texted my mum as well as Jace and Jeff to see what was going on. And of course I wake up, and there's a post about how cruel people can be to innocent children. Anyways, between my mum and Jeff, I got some more background info. I don't know where all their money goes or what kind of bath her parents took. But their financial situation is bad. As in asking my fixed/low-income parents for money for Daisy's tuition is bad. Obviously, they couldn't help them. And I guess Jenny and my brother had told Daisy she was going to have to pick between vacation and her school. And she picked her school. But since it's taken Jenny longer than they expected to find a job, they can no longer swing that either. I know you all think she's a little demon, but my heart broke for her with that. And yes, I am not getting into it. I'll rage for too long. But yes, the older three have always gone to public school. I do think it was Jenny's parents paying the tuition, though. And according to Jeff, Daisy is getting older and having more of her own opinions, and Jenny doesn't like that. When she found out she couldn't go back to her school, she asked about a trip. And when my brother told Jenny I'd said no, she told Daisy she couldn't go because she was bad. Heartbreaking, and just generally a plus parenting all around. I don't think this is the end of all of this. Jeff needs to be more discreet, but told me Jenny was losing it because of Botox and Ozempic withdrawal. He did say the house wasn't as bad as you'd think. She mostly ignores them, and has continued that. He works, and Hannah has spent most of the summer at her best friend's house. Also, one quick thing. I know everyone is worried about my nephews and niece, and thinks they live horrible, miserable lives, and this vacation is the only bright spot of the year. Yes, their lives are completely unfair, and I feel awful for them. But they are happy kids. From what Jace has told me, since she had Daisy, they've always kind of just treated Jenny like an eccentric roommate that their dweeb of a dad is sleeping with. They're not all rude and screaming at one another. It's more polite indifference. They also do care a lot about Daisy, and would never ask me to leave her at home. It's me that doesn't want to bring her, because she needs a parent with her. And as Drill would say, I would face God and walk backwards into hell before I ever invited, much less paid for, Jenny to come with us. Update. Hey everyone. I don't know why I'm updating with this, but things have gotten pretty nuts. I wasn't even going to update until after the trip, which is still a go with just the 5 of us, and will stay that way. But it's just a full-on circus now. Unfortunately, my brother and Jenny have not changed one bit, and there have been multiple instances since my last post alone that they have shown their preference for Daisy over the other 3. I said before I don't do social media drama. Or drama in general, but especially in public. So I have been ignoring Jenny's little vague booking campaign. But like I said, she had family and friends supporting her on it. Except for one cousin, who messaged me a few days ago and asked for a call. I reminded her, and just reminding you all before you start asking me why I don't do short trips with Daisy, that I live very far away in a different time zone, so we set up a time to FaceTime. Honestly, I kind of remember this woman, but not really. She and Jenny aren't close, but she was at some pre-baby events. And it turns out Jenny and Jason have been lying to my family about their money issues. Jenny's parents, she's an only child, have not gone broke. In fact, they're doing fine. They are one of the few older people who weren't sucked into Facebook. BTW. Lucky for her. While my mom is sharing slop with me on the daily. But I still love her. They cut Jenny off. She's simply been lying to everyone, including my parents. And saying that her parents wish they could still help. But they can't. They told her months ago the money stream was over. Why now? So the story goes that a few years back, Jenny complained to my mum that she had a 16-year sentence with Tiffany's kids. And even the boys leaving at 18 wouldn't matter since Hannah was only a few years older than Daisy. My mum apparently said something along the lines of anyone would be lucky to have Hannah in the house. If she's affecting your marriage so much, she can live with us. It was kind of a snarky comment from mum, But apparently Jenny held onto it like a prayer. When my oldest nephew Jace graduated from high school last year, he was told he couldn't keep living there. And they've already told my middle nephew Jeff the same. Jenny's parents very rarely see the older kids since Jason, and Jenny don't bring them when they visit. And her parents don't travel much, and don't like coming to my hometown. So according to the cousin, they weren't fully aware of the issues, and were under the assumption that the older three preferred spending the time that my brother and his second wife and daughter visit them with my parents, which they respected. But apparently Jenny basically had been yapping to them, and let it slip out how in just over a year she'd have her life back, and her stepkids would be out of the house. Her parents asked, "What about Hannah?" And she told them that my parents want to raise Hannah, because they know how it's affecting her marriage. That didn't sit right with Jenny's mum, call her Pam, so she called my mum after they left. They aren't close or anything but do talk every now and again. My mum was so confused by what she was saying. They are on a fixed income and have only a 2-bedroom place now. Of course, if they needed to, the kids could stay with them. But it's not ideal. So, and remember this is months ago, Pam thought maybe she misheard. But my mum let it slip that Jace already stays with them when he comes back from school. And Pam was confused about why he wouldn't stay at my brother's. When my mum told her they kicked him out, Pam was like, "Oh wow, that's crazy," and the conversation ended with my mum. But apparently this is all hearsay. Obviously Pam called Jenny up and told her, "How dare you take our money at your age," while telling an 18-year-old they're an adult and to figure it out. I don't know how the call went, but it ended with Pam and her husband completely cutting Jenny and Jason off financially. Her cousin said they were sending them tens of thousands of dollars a year. And get this, they truly didn't know about the inequality. I didn't believe the cousin at this. How could they not know? She says that while her parents love her, Jenny is not close with them and had basically lied, saying that my parents, who again have never had a lot of money and are now on a fixed income, and I were spoiling the oldest three and ignoring Daisy. Even before I was taking them on trips, she'd make up vacations they were on for why they couldn't go on trips with them. Jenny told them I was paying for them to attend the private school that Daisy was attending when Pam did some digging and found out Jace did not graduate from that private school. She cut off paying tuition for it. She was going to continue that. Apparently she refuses to take her daughter's calls and is refusing to listen to family members defending Jenny. These family members supporting her, a few aunts, and their kids already have beef with Pam over money, and they are supporting Jenny. So, I know she had talked to my mum, but I had to ask if Pam even knows the half of all of it. I told the cousin a few things, and she seemed shocked and asked if Pam could call me. I told her definitely, and the next day she did. We've spoken before, obviously, but she's a pretty introverted woman, so I wasn't sure what to expect. But she just seemed exhausted. She acknowledged that Jenny was the result of her parenting failures, but said she was always a difficult child. I was like, "Girl, she's over 40. Childhood has been over." She laughed at that and apologized about everything I've had to do for my oldest nibblings. I assured her that I wanted to do things for them, but I appreciated the apology. She said she will be setting the record straight with her family members. Unfortunately for them, Jenny and Jason's little nuclear family life they've been LARPing for the last few years is over. Her parents will no longer be funding them. Jenny has gotten a job, but a decade out of the workforce really screwed her over. I feel bad for Daisy, but hopefully things will have to be more equal over there. Obviously this isn't over, and my parents and I are going to be keeping a close eye on everything and open communication with the kids. But I can't say I feel bad for Jenny and Jason. Update. Hey everyone. Just wanted to give a quick update. A few weeks ago, we went back to the States and took the kids to Maine. We only took the older three. Jason and Jenny and I have not been getting along lately. And yes, I was worried they'd tell me I couldn't take them. But we didn't have any issues. It was a blast. Highly recommend Maine in the fall. But yeah, our already bad relationship took a nosedive when Jason made a rude comment about my wife to my mum a few weeks ago. I confronted him because not only was it rude, it was just untrue. He said he knows I talk about his wife, and I told him hell yes I do because she's a freaking psychotic monster, and he's a dweeb with no backbone, and he just constantly goes off on how I don't understand him and don't care about him. Sorry. I'm too busy worrying about your own kids to worry about your stupid wife's feelings or her family. The weird thing is, since Jenny and Daisy have been fighting more, Jenny has been almost favoring Hannah. We think to make Daisy jealous. Taking her shopping, doing things with just her. Hannah isn't concerned, and I think she understands what's going on, and who's going to turn down gifts. I tried explaining the gifts weren't without strings, but have no idea what else to tell her. But in all the fighting, I did stop talking to Jenny's cousin. I had met her a few times. We were friends on Insta and chatted on there a bit before. But I just felt so icky about everything. I don't need to know Jenny's life. But between me and you, Reddit, she looks terrible. For someone who spends so much time and money on her looks, it's almost funny. And before you come at me, yes, she had a whole workup at the doctor's, and nothing is wrong with her. My wife says she's just allergic to working, which might be the meanest thing she's ever said, but wouldn't crack the top 10 for me about Jenny Elmau. So yeah, Jenny is working again. Some kind of bookkeeping job, not sure exactly. But she was able to keep Daisy in her private school. The kids are good. The only big news is that I stayed back an extra week to go to California with Jace. Apparently that's where Tiffany has been living, and she offered him money to fly out to see her. He was unsure about it, and I told him I'd go with him so he'd have someone. It went fine. I didn't really talk to her. She's remarried and seems sober. We both thought so. I guess there were apologies, and he accepted them. But he isn't sure if he'll keep talking to her, or if he'll tell the other two. There was some money involved. She opened some CDs in their names and added Jace as the other person on them. I'm not a finance person, sorry. He told me there's about $15K in each. And he isn't sure what to do. He obviously is going to get the money to his siblings, but isn't sure the best way without my brother trying to take it. My wife is going to help him work through that, as it's a world she understands, but I feel so bad for him. All three of them deserve parents that love and support them, and were dealt a bad hand. So yeah, go to Maine, love your family, and don't be a DCK. Happy holidays, everyone. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.